Hey y'all, it's Sarah, and I'm jumping into part 3 of my brunch vignette, my Miniverse brunch vignette, and I'm going to be throwing in something that's not Miniverse in with this just because I'm Southern, and it's something that definitely comes to mind when I think breakfast, and that would be grits, but everything else that I'm doing for this video is Miniverse stuff. So some of these things are super simple and no big deal. And the first one being sausage. I wanted to do a little bit of link sausage, and I'm just using the hot dogs. And this is super easy. I'm just basically coloring my hot dogs. You see a little hot dog there. I think it's super cute that they put the grill lines on here. One of the first things I did though is I've got like a little sanding sponge here that I don't know if you can see, if I can get it to focus here. Can you see those little bumps and things, the lines from the manufacturing part? I'm going to smooth some of that out, and this also gives a little bit of texture for the marker to stick to. And you can maybe see where that seam is, and I'm just smoothing that out. So now that I've got it buffed down, I'm just taking, once again, one of my handy dandy furniture markers. This one is walnut, and I'm just coloring this. You could do this for your hot dogs to make them look a little more grilled and cooked. And you'll see that just as I finish this first layer. And that will be in another video as well, because my next spread after that will be kind of an Americana Memorial Day type spread. So there will definitely be hot dogs involved. So you can see what a difference that makes already from kind of that plasticky pink look. Let's see, let me grab one that's not finished. That's already a big difference. And to make it a hair darker, to get a little more close to breakfast sausage, I just took an alcohol marker. You could use any kind of permanent marker, really. This one is in a deep brown, like a burnt umber level brown, but you could probably do the same thing with black. And this is why my hands stay messy, because this is where our fingers come in handy. I'm using my finger to soak some of that off as I apply it. And I'm not even going even on this. I'm tapping it in some places so there's darker and lighter, if that makes any sense. So as you do that, you'll start to get like depths of color layer, and it gives a little bit more breakfast sausage idea rather than just pink hot dog sausage. So as you can see, they look a little more like cooked sausage rather than raw hot dogs. So my next one is going to be French toast. You can see this is like some swirl bread here. And this is the one I'm using, although they do have just the regular bread. I'm trying to get it out of my little bread box here. They have regular bread that you could make some toast out of. So for this one, step one is once again sanding down. I'm sanding into the surface, partially because I don't want the shine, even though the resin is going to add shine to it. I don't want the shine on my bread. I'm not sanding enough to take any of the paint off of here, but I am sanding enough to give it a little less plastic texture. I'm going to go around the edges also. Maybe you can see how that looks different. Also, it allows me to get rid of these little issues. So hopefully you can see what I mean. This has a much more matte finish than this one. The colors are a little softer, and this allows the texture to show through quite a bit more. So my next step was coming in with that same dark marker I had nearby earlier, and I'm just going to put some little specks like that, because mine is going to be cinnamon raisin French toast. So these are going to hopefully look like my raisins. I might have got them a little big on this piece. I'm going to go a little smaller with this piece. So I got a little bit of cinnamon raisin. And then if you've seen any of the other parts of this series, I have added cinnamon using some embossing powder that's kind of a cinnamon color. But I wanted to say that real cinnamon would not be an issue because it is a natural insect repellent anyway, and it's not really going to go bad on you. I've used real cinnamon on crafts for many, many years to replicate rust and not had any issues with any of those being a problem. So right now I'm following that swirl pattern with a little bit of clear resin with just a little toothpick, and I'm going to dust that with my embossing powder. And the only reason I'm using the embossing powder rather than actual real cinnamon is because I have had this canister of embossing powder for probably 15 to 17 years and never ended up really using much of it. So I feel like this is a good as opportunity as ever to feel like I got use out of it. So there's my little bit of cinnamon dust, and I'm going to lightly just tap on that swirl. I don't want to smear it. I just want to tap down because I don't want my cinnamon super heavy. So I'm just going to tap down on it and remove some of that back off so it's just barely sticky. So this is the embossing powder that I mentioned. I don't even know if this company, this particular one, is still in business. I have no clue. This is the color that it is, if you're interested in something like this. And I'm just going to sprinkle a bit down on here. It is really not necessary to do the cinnamon sprinkle. I just like the added texture that it gives. When you're looking at them up close, you can actually see that gritty kind of cinnamony texture. So this is where I'm at this point. If I wanted to, I could always toast up my sides a little bit. So I've got my furniture marker in the light color. I could come in and give it a little toasting on the edges here. And I'm just kind of tapping that on. I'm not doing anything special. Usually I just let the tip of the marker do the job for me and just add just a hair, a hint of something. The more small details you add like that, the more that it tricks your eye into thinking that it's more realistic. That's why when we look at the tiny plastic Barbie type miniatures, we obviously, our brain goes immediately to it's plastic. Because they're usually flat in color. They're not very shaded or shadowed, or they don't really have any depth to that plastic. So I'm doing a little down the sides as well. You could always darken your entire edge if you wanted to. However, I'm just kind of doing it in little splotches, and especially to hide out some of the little mold imperfections on the bread, like those spots. Kind of camouflages them. I sanded it down as much as I could, but I did not want to damage any of the integrity of the edge of the bread. So now we can see a little more realism in comparison to just the flat plasticky look. I'm going to be using maple syrup on mine, the maple syrup resin, and I'm using this dish, but I'm running a little low on dishes, and since I know I like to swap things out because I do things like this, I very seldom attach any of my pieces directly to the servingware. I typically will make it a flat piece and removable. That way I can take it off, put it on a different platter if I want to. So in order to do that, this is just a piece of wax paper. It's the back of a sticker, or the backing off of a sticker. So here's the waxy side. And I'm going to lay it on the dish that I intend on using and try to map it out a little so I can see where my edges are and I can know where to come up, where I can take things. So you can kind of see, if you want to, you can crease that side so you know where your top edges are. That's not necessary. I'm just doing it so you guys can see an easy way to map out your pieces where they're removable. For those of you that are getting into magnetizing your stuff, I've seen a lot of posts about that lately where they add magnets to things so that your silverware sticks to it or whatever. This is a really handy tip to know where you can map your things out to without actually adhering them down. So I've got my toast here, and you can see it's going to sit there very similar to how it would on the plate. And I have got my butter, and I'm trying to grab it without spilling it, so give me a second. So here is my butter, and all I did was take some of the kid modeling clay, and here's a piece of it. This is like the Dollar Tree kids package of modeling clay, and yes, it does stick to itself in those packages, so a lot of times you gotta try to pull off to get a piece that doesn't have a lot of color to it. But I mixed the yellow and the white and got like this creamier yellow, and pretty much just took a flat surface and shaped it out to a square, and that's what I've got sitting here. Although I will tell you, it is not the easiest thing to cut, and I have to be honest, I would guess that people that work with clay have some kind of special cutting, something that works. You would think that a craft knife would just slice right through it. It's clay after all. It's wet clay, or uncured clay, so it's still squishy. But here is an attempt at cutting and you see it squishes down. So I keep trying new ways to cut this more evenly, and it doesn't always go well for me. However, it does give me a decent little thinness to do this right here. Just the FYI. So I'm just going to take that and, well, that little piece stuck right on itself. And do that. And I probably should go ahead and attach my little pieces of toast to itself. So I'm just going to use some clear resin. So right now I have a clear resin right under that corner. And I've been seeing a lot about this, people complaining that they cannot get their things to cure. So having a handheld light is handy. I have a lamp. I have, I don't think my cord's going to reach here. I have this, an actual nail lamp. It was a cheap one that I got for my nails, and it was not quite good enough for my nails. I think it was like $5. But it curves all the way around. So a lot of times it'll hit, the lights inside of it will hit from lots of different angles. Holding your light directly above like this is not going to do it, because this is not transparent. The light's not getting through to the resin. So the handhelds are great. They may take a little longer, but they are great so that you can shift things around and get that light under those surfaces, because just lighting it up like that won't cure everything. It won't get through. So you got to try to hit from lots of different angles. Since I don't have a good buttery yellow resin, I'm taking a little bit of my clear resin and a little bit of one of the cheese ones, and mixing those together to get a softer, kind of buttery, melted look. Whoops, you can see. Might want a little more pigment than that. It might take a little extra for it to actually show up on that darker color of the bread. So I've smushed some butter down into my bread, and I kind of smushed it so it would look like it was starting to melt, so that the liquid portion would make sense. And I'm going to secure that in place with my little buttery resin here. Ooh, it looks so melty. I'm going to flash cure it a little bit, just enough that when I layer this other maple syrup one over it, that they don't mix together. So I'm going to start adding my syrup. This is just this one. And I don't think that I want it directly on my butter. So if you're having issues with getting stringy bits across, like to drizzle, pull it out ahead of time, right? Like string that out, and then you can start dropping your string. I'm going to use that one. I want some spillover down the sides a little, but I can't do too much spillover because the pan I'm using is very small, or the tray that I'm using is not really big enough for the French toast, but that's what I'm going to use. Okay, so see how that strings up? As it starts to string up, pull it back and forth over, and you'll get some of that drizzly look. So my resin is still damp. However, I'm going to flash cure it, which means it's not going to be entirely cured. It'll still be tacky. You guys know what I'm talking about. When it starts to harden, but it's still a little sticky, that's the point I'm getting it to, so that I can add my powdered sugar without it soaking down into the liquid and just vanishing out. And for my powdered sugar, I am using this chalk, old school chalk. I sand it down very easily with just the edge of something, and that's what I end up with. The cool thing about this is that it also serves another purpose. When I want my lighter resins, my white resins, like the cream cheese or some of those, they're not quite white enough for things like sour cream and stuff like that. So this also works as a pigment. So it's a twofold thing. Right now, you can see I can touch that and not mess up how it's laid out, but it's still definitely tacky. That's when I want to do my powdered sugar. And then I'll finish curing it. That way it sticks to the tackiness and it'll stick into the resin. But if you do it too early, you can risk just soaking down in there and turning more like the white colored resins. I got a little much on that. I'm just going to blow it off and restart. So that only works until it's cured. Once I cure it, it will not work that way for me. So I'm going to go ahead and finish curing this. So now that it's cured, I should be able to just pop it right off of my wax paper. It just slides right off. And I should be able to fit it right to this particular plate for sure. You can see even my little drip marks fit. But if I decided that I wanted to change this, bring out one of the oval ones, and it still fits. So that makes it really cool to be able to just keep your same kitchenware and just be able to change out the food. So the next thing I happen to have this particular cup. I didn't have any Miniverse ones that would work, but I've got this little guy. It's kind of small, but I'm gonna make it work. So I am starting with a little bit of red resin for my mimosa, and I'm going to try, because I only want a little there at the bottom, I'm going to try to dip it down to the bottom with a stick. And I did already what I was trying not to do. I got it on the sides. And mostly I'm just trying to get it to that bottom section. No worries though. I'm just taking a Q-tip dipped in rubbing alcohol. The higher the content, the better. But I'm currently working with 70% rubbing alcohol and it's fine. I usually prefer the 90% range. But I'm just going to spin this around in there until I get the mess part out. So I would suggest letting it sit for a little bit to drain all the way flat and level. And I'm coming in with some juice. I'm going to do my best, whoops, to squeeze down in here. So hopefully I'm getting it in there pretty well. Now I've got it filled to about that point. I'm going to add some of the water resin to lighten it just a hair at the very top. So maybe just by a drop or two. So I feel like I'm pretty happy with how that looks. And at this point, I'm going to use a craft knife and cut a slit in my strawberry slice and my little pineapple. If you're curious about this particular strawberry slice, the pineapple is Miniverse, just their pineapple. The strawberry slice, now I've seen all kinds of these for sale online, and they can be a little overpriced, actually. They come in dividers a lot of times. And usually when they do, they're already sorted out for you and that kind of thing. But you're paying for that. And I don't know if you can see, this is 1.2 ounces. So tons in here. I mean, tons and tons. This is Recollections brand, which is Michael's. And I think it runs like $4.99 typically. And I used a coupon or a special they do occasionally is buy one glitter and get one or get one half off. So really you can get probably thousands of these in there, to be honest with you. I have used quite a bit of these in my son's mall in his candy shop. I made jars and jars of candies, and I've used them for nails, and I still have all of this left. You've probably seen some in my minis. So I've used a ton out of there and still have so many left. Okay, so I've sliced into my fruit. I decided that the Mimosa, I've never had one, but the one I saw online, it looked like this. I know that's not a very good shot of it, but it had this green sugared edge. And I absolutely could do that because I have some of the Dollar Tree green sand. I absolutely could do that, but honestly, I wasn't a big fan. So I thought that I would at least sugar my pineapple. But rather than use the green sugar, I pulled out the white sand that we used earlier. This one that we used for the grits. I decided to use it, and I'm just going to take my little pineapple piece here, my tweezers, and I'm dipping it in a little clear resin and just dipped the pineapple in. Now I'm just going to take, now it's sugared, the sliced end that I cut into. I'm going to dip it in a little of the water resin and slide it down on my cup. So as you can see, I went ahead and decided to sugar the rim of my cup anyway. I happened to notice that there was just some manufacturing glitches on the cup itself, that if I sanded off like the little nubs, if I tried to sand them, I risked scratching the glass up. So I opted to just hide them with a little bit of the sand crystals. So this is everything that I've gotten done for my brunch, along with things that I've shown in previous videos anyway, such as the eggs and things like that. And my next video will be a decorate with me and see how I use all these pieces to create a vignette. So that's all I've got for you. I know this was a long one, but I didn't want to break it into even one more video besides the decorate with me one. I hope maybe you picked up some ideas or tips, tricks, something like that as you watched along, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye, y'all.